Hi, Bob Zollner here. In this video, I'd like to touch on my problem with compulsive debt. Um, I think I've had this problem for pretty much most of my adult life. Back in the 80s, the most serious issue I had was with unemployment compensation fraud. I underreported my income and accumulated quite a obligation that I owed to the state of Wisconsin because of it. So ended up doing some probation time, and that ended up turning into some jail time because of some other um, problems I had with driving offenses and DUIs, and so I was revoked. But all throughout the 80s, as I got into my adult years, I accumulated quite a number of credit cards and other unsecured debt that, and I attributed it to drinking at the time because I wasn't paying the bills on time. I was accumulating more debt that I could handle, and I pretty much just shrugged it off to, well, I'm drinking too much, and so once I handle the drinking issue, once I sober up, then I'm not going to have an issue with accumulated debt, uncontrolled debt. That's not the case. I've been sober now for about 11 years, and I am very heavily in debt to the tune of well over $250,000. I am guilty. I was convicted of identity theft back in both 2000 and 2004. Those offenses were committed while I was going through sobriety. So the issue is, why was I still accumulating unsecured debt when I was completely sober? I mean, I could no longer blame this other addiction for what I had done with the debt issue. A little bit about the identity theft thing. Back in 1998, when I was married to my first wife, we had both been going through some really heavy financial problems. And I'm going to preface this by saying I do not excuse my behavior because of the problems we were experiencing financially. I made bad choices, and this is what happened. But because of the debts, and because my wife was going through a lot of medical problems, and the debts just kept building and building, we started by borrowing from family. We maxed out credit cards, borrowed from as many people, as many organizations as we could, until we just couldn't anymore. And then I, on my own, without my wife's knowledge, started going to the check cashing places, which just started to become popular back in the late 90s, and accumulated some heavy debt there. Didn't kind of shrugged off the fact that the interest rates were just ridiculous. Some of these interest rates can go well above 500%. They figured on a yearly basis. They epitomize the definition of predatory lending. You got to figure it's a 2-week loan, and they're charging you a flat fee for the privilege of borrowing money. And now it's all over the internet. I mean, it was like a kid in a candy store over the last few years, going on the internet and taking advantage of all these different websites for offering cash advances, payday advances. There's just so many websites out there looking for people like me that just can't seem to manage their money properly, and it's ironic because I've got a 4-year degree in accounting, and it can happen to anybody. But going back to the late 90s, I remember I was sitting down in our apartment, and the thought occurred to me. I had a small accounting business going on. I was making use of my accounting degree, and I was working as an accountant, and I had a small tax accounting business, maybe about a dozen clients. And I was sitting on the John one day, and it occurred to me, hey, my father has the same first name as I do. And I thought, you know what, I could use his information that I had available on TurboTax. I could use his information to obtain credit cards. And I rationalized it away by saying, you know what, over time we could pay this back and get some cash flow going, pay off some debts, pay it off, and nobody would be the wiser. Well, as things go, one thing led to another, and both my wife and I started spending, and it turned out that we were doing more spending on frivolous things than including casinos and home shopping networks and the like, rather than really paying down our debts. So the thought was we're going to have to get some more credit cards, and so in addition to my father, I used personal friends from church, my wife's parents, and by the time I was caught, I was looking in the area of about $75,000 in fraudulent debt. My parents had offered to forgive me. They did forgive me. People from church forgave me. They gave me chance after chance to stop what I was doing, to cut up the credit cards, to pay it off, and I just couldn't do it. I accumulated more and more debt, and I eventually went to jail and eventually went to prison because of what I did. I served a total of a little over 7 years in the Wisconsin correctional system because of my foolish choices regarding identity theft, and added to that my issues with unemployment compensation fraud. I have, like I said before, I've borrowed money online, outrageous interest rates. I used to consider it some sort of a strange compulsion, but there is evidence out there. There is actually a group called Debtors Anonymous, and it was suggested to me by my psychologist that I'm seeing that it's a real affliction, it's a real addiction, and they actually use a regular 12-step program like is used for Alcoholics Anonymous or NA, Narcotics Anonymous, or any of these. And as I'm sitting here talking, I mean, I'm going to seriously consider attending those meetings on a weekly basis. But again, I mean, my debt is to the tune of well over $250,000, and much of that debt is from defaulted student loan. During my years of college, I took advantage of any loan as well as grants, but I mean, I took advantage of any loan I could get a hold of, and they tried to be careful and make us go to meetings and help us to try to realize just how serious these debts were, that these needed to be paid. And it was so easy to borrow this money. It is a lot harder nowadays, but back then it was just so easy. I mean, you signed a couple of papers and all this money started coming in, and you had the money to basically you could use it for whatever you wanted. I mean, in addition to the tuition and school expenses. I mean, if you want to go buy a car, go buy a car. It was just so easy. It's to the point where, I mean, I am in some serious trouble. My credit is shot. I cannot even buy a vehicle. My car died recently, and I cannot even buy a decent vehicle at a decent interest rate. Way back in 98, 99, when my first wife and I went through our first bankruptcy. I've been through a total of 2 bankruptcies, but we went through our first bankruptcy in late 98. And there were some special programs going on that some companies offered for people like us to be able to purchase a new vehicle, and we needed one at the time. And I contacted one of these companies, and even with our record, we were able to secure a loan for a brand new Chevy S10 truck through GMAC financing for only 14.5% interest. And I'm saying only. That doesn't sound like a terribly good rate. Fast forward to about a year ago, and I went through one of these online called roadloans.com or something, and the best rate they could offer me was 26%. I mean, to pay that kind of money for a secured car loan is, of course, you can go to one of these PLS loans or whatever, cash advance places, and they'll give you money. You turn in your title, and they'll borrow you money on it, and they'll charge you somewhere in the area of 300% interest. So I mean, and I've taken advantage of those loans. It's crazy, but I got to the point where I didn't care how much interest I was paying. I think in the back of my mind, I just figured, well, it's like any other addiction. It's one of those things where I put it to the back of my mind, and I'll take care of it later. Looking for the short-term benefits, if you will, rather than the long-term consequences. But as soon as I get some reliable transportation, these meetings are out in Madison, and I live in Ripon right now. So once I'm able to secure some decent transportation, I'm definitely going to start attending these meetings on a weekly basis. And what I'm probably going to do is I'll probably update you guys on what I'm learning at the meetings. But this is definitely an addictive / compulsive issue that is happening to a lot of people, and thus that's why there's so many websites out there on the internet that cater to people that just can't control themselves in the issue of accumulation of debt. And of course, you know, the nation's economy is probably going to hell in a handbasket because of people like us, you know, and, you know, unable to pay our debts and letting them go to default, and so we're partly to blame for that, and got to be responsible in that area. So I will end my little session at that, and I will set up another video in the near future. Thanks for listening as always. Please share your comments, and God bless, and see you later.